गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। Today evening we're going to see what Iran's options are, and to discuss all this I have with me Brig Arun Sahgal. Sir, at the outset, welcome, uh, and it's been a long time since we've discussed anything, and I'm glad that you've come up to discuss Iran's options today evening.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure, honor.
Thank you, sir. Look, I'd like to tell everyone, we chose this subject. Everyone thinks Iran's days are numbered, right? And USA is going to walk over, and that Iran's, nuclear arsenal is gone. It has gone to a large extent. A lot of capability it has lost. It has lost many things, but it's a nation of 92 million people. It's a nation of 92 million people who have always been independent, right? Independent thinking, independent action. They threw off the Shah who was imposed on them and went in for a revolution. We might find the revolution, not to our liking, but that Iranian revolution brought about a lot of change from within in the country. We might not like that what happened in the past from 79 to today as a result of that revolution, but it's their country, their outlook, and the way they live and the way they want to do. And for the past 10, 15 years, they've been standing up to the Western world. Not only standing up to the Western world, uh, despite tremendous sanctions, despite tremendous, obstructions, they've stitched up alliances. They've stitched up alliances with uh, militia groups and expanded their power all over the Middle East. They've tied up with Russia, China, and their alliances with North Korea, the CRIC alliance, and they had a global role to play also. Look, all that I understand, is today at chipped away. A lot of Iran has taken a lot of beating just in the past 1.5 years. But the fact is, Iran taking a beating is not new. It takes a beating and it comes back. It's this ability to recuperate which is important in Iran. And even now, Iran has not lost all its chips. It still has options. It might still live to fight another day. It might fight through to a point where others are exhausted and then do something. So, all these, it has options. And to put us wise on these options, and also say, look, countries don't just keel over just like that, right? We've just had this experience with Pakistan. We might have beaten Pakistan, but Pakistan remains still a tough nut to crack, right? It still poses a threat to India on many issues. So it is with this idea that we said, look, I requested Brigadier Sahgal, let's see what and examine what Iran's options are going forward from here. Sir, with this, I yield the floor to you. All yours, sir. Please take over.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, let me start by talking a bit about the state of play in Iran at this point in time. We are fully conscious of the fact that Iran has taken a fair amount of beating from first the Israeli attacks and then the so-called midnight hammer or whatever from the Americans. Its nuclear facilities have been degraded to a large extent, and the fact of the matter is that it is standing at the cusp of its destiny in terms of how should it move forward. How should it move forward is the kind of question which the Iranian leadership faces today. But before I come to that, I like to qualify with that is that to perceive that the Iranian nuclear establishment has been totally destroyed and has been put out of action will be a fallacy on our part. Second, the enriched uranium and other elements which he has put together remain under his charge. He may not have the capacity of putting together a weapon system in a hurry, but my personal view is that he can create about low yield weapons of 5 to 20 kt with 80% enriched uranium, 80% plus enriched uranium in next few months, if not or up to a year. So basically, what we're looking at, not a totally destroyed Iran. Second issue we also must remember is that Iran has been the main player who has been supporting the Russians in this war in Ukraine, providing it with missile system, fighting it with drones, kamikaze system, and has also developed a fairly advanced hypersonic weapon system capabilities. So, third issue is Iran is a civilizational state, as the general talked about. It has values. It has beliefs. It is true that under the rule of Khomeini and the clerics, they have suffered a lot, but yet there has been growth, there is development, and is years and years of sanctions have not broken their back. So, with this small preamble, let me highlight the what is the dilemmas that Tehran faces at this juncture. Post American attack and the continued exchange of attacks between Iran and Israel, where Israel is doing more, Iranians are doing little less. The first fundamental option, first fundamental dilemma with the faith is how do they react? Do they react strongly to maintain credibility, or and face devastating consequences, or carry out limited attacks on US bases? There are 40,000 troops, American troops in the region. There are close to about 19 bases in the region. They can attack them. They can sort of, continuously to harass them. That kind of strategy of slow fire on American bases is something they can do. But each of them, both of them have consequences. And third perception, or sorry, the third option for the Iranian is concentrate to fire on Israel. Forget about the Americans. Americans president has already declared. Let's see how much truth in that he has finished with his task of degrading, obliterating, as he like to say, the three main nuclear facilities. Let now concentrate on Israel, show to the region that Iran can stand up, and, if possible, degrade the Israeli response. We are seeing some signs of that already in terms of a weakening air defense system. The arrow system is not working well. The Iron Dome is also having its own sufferings. So we are seeing a certain degree of fray owing to repeated attacks coming up on Israel. And there is also the moral factor of the Israeli people who are not used to being struck. So this is the out of the three choices. The important point of these scenarios is that out of these scenarios, what does an immediate retaliation against US bases would mean? At this point in time, it's important to note Americans are deployed, Americans are prepared, and there will be a massive retaliation. So I do not think, in my particular personal point of view, Iran is going to go down that route. The second element is delayed retaliation. There is a costly American presence in the region. It cannot maintain its presence. We are already hearing shouting from the Pacific Command, who is saying, my resources have been taken away and I am vulnerable. And should China do something, or there's a flare up in Philippines, that is the point of view, and they are saying that we are vulnerable. And people like mm, uh, Cosby, who is their Deputy Secretary, Assistant Secretary of Defense,
Colby's, Elbridge Colby's.
Albert Colby, who is the Deputy Secretary of Defense. They are saying it that this is not our primary theater. Our primary theater is East Asia,
China.
Indo-Pacific, and China. Why are we taking away resources from them? So right now they are being overruled, but the fact of the matter is there's a large armada which has been collected together there. Is something which the Iranians would not like to contest at this particular point in time. What they can do, on the other hand, is do small attacks. And the small attacks are something which can be done by them using their proxies. The proxies can launch attack, they can undertake small drone attacks, take out some American presence over there, hit at some thing with non-attributability to the extent possible. They can continue to do these attacks. But this is the perspective that the Iranians have. Then they also have the ability to, let's put it this way, they have done it in the past of Straits of Hormuz. They can start blocking it, or they can disrupt shipping in that region. Uh, 20% of the global oil, 65% of our oil comes from there, and that can be a lot of pain to the people. But here again, there is a dilemma for the Iranians. The dilemma basically is this: is that the Chinese are 60% dependent on their oil production from this region. Sorry, their crude from this region. So if Chinese and Indians are both hurt, then they would have loss of revenues and also loss of partnership. There's something which they are not very keen to do at this particular point in time. So even in Straits of Hormuz, there is a bit of a problem area, although they can do selective disruption of shipping, particularly with those ships with flags of the what they believe as their enemies, or the people with whom they have bad relationships. So this is the issue that then there is this aspect of what is called the demonstration strategy. They can do missile tests, naval exercises, target single oil tankers, use the Houthis to attack thing. So small scale attacks along with continued assault on Israel appears to me the most probable line of action which the Iranians will take. This is even the Straits of Hormuz, although the parliament has passed the law that they allow the government to take a call, but the Chief Security Council of Iran has to take a call on this issue, and I don't think this is an easy thing. Yet another element in this game is correlation of geopolitical forces that could emerge as a part of the American intervention. What we are seeing is that the Iranians have reached out to the Russians. Iranian foreign minister was in Russia, and today Putin has come up with a very strong statement in favor of Iran. And it is also learned from various sources is that they are willing to provide them both in terms of air defense system to strengthen the air defense against Israelis S-400s and and other advanced system, as well as latest missiles and drones. So the whole issue basically is this thing is this will be, as far as Russia is concerned, a quid pro quo operation, because when the Russians needed them, Iranians were the first ones to support them, and so therefore drones, kamikazes, long range missile systems are all part and parcel of this support framework which the Russians could provide to the Iranians. The next element is the Chinese. Chinese are already doing adequately. They are doing it quietly. They are not making too much of noise about it. What they are basically doing is they have opened up the Baidu completely. They have opened up the operational Baidu, which provides them 1 meter resolution and have been responsible for pinpoint targeting by the Iranians on the Israelis, the attack on the Mossad center, the attack on the IDF headquarters, attack on the hospital. All these are part and parcel of what was being provided to them. Added to that, there is a new element which the Iranians have got, and that is what they call the ammunition. Sir, I'm forgetting the name of the ammunition, with a lot of well, they have an ammunition which gives out a large number of of small pellets.
MIRV, sir.
No, not MIR. These are cluster
Submunitions.
ammunition. Sorry, cluster
Cluster
ammunition.
ammunition.
They
Cluster
have
ammunition.
developed a cluster ammunition which is seen to and have been very effective against the Israeli targets so far. They haven't fired too much of it, but these cluster bombs are another area. So, taking all this into account, like the general said in the beginning, Iran is not a beaten force at this particular point in time. To think that Iran has lost all its capacities and capabilities and Iran is on the back foot, I would say that will be an oversimplification of the situation. What Iran is facing are dire consequences. Iran, no doubt, is being pushed, but it has not lost its vitality completely. So with this is the scenario as far as the options of Iran are concerned. Now I'll defer to the general if he wants to add or question me on some issues that I've talked about.
No, I'll add, sir. It's not, I mean, what you have said is very right. Iran still has some militias which can continue to, in fact, today it's out on social media, somewhere in Syria or in Iraq,
20.
yeah, some American base has been attacked by local militias. So, it will not be overt operation. These might be covert or asymmetric or hybrid operations. And hybrid operations have their value. One. Number two, Houthis are still there. They can close the Red Sea. I mean, Houthis have demonstrated their capability of closing the Red Sea gap, bubble mandap, and everyone had to pay a big price to flatten them out. They're still there. And if Iran does selective closure of Strait of Hormuz, they can inflict pain. It's not as if it's again asymmetric war, it's hybrid. You know, today I go with what Brig Arun Sahgal has said. Iran's best options are asymmetry, and Iran's best options are hybrid in nature, right? And that's the first thing which I completely agree. We cannot count it out. And one more issue is Iran can't be invaded. It's a mountainous country. You can't go and take over Iran. No one has been able to do that ever since I've known and I've been in the military. And I'm sure Brigadier Sahgal also will agree to it. Uh, Even in the Iran-Iraq war in the 80s, half of Iran was lost before they threw the Iraqis out. So that is out, and I don't think uh, uh, Iran, sorry, I don't think Israel or USA have the capability to put boots on ground to go and invade Iran. And this is where Iran's strength is. So I would like you to dilate on this because can Iran be taken over? There's my view, what I've said. And because it is connected to regime change, it is also connected to destroying their missile capabilities completely. It is also connected to searching out where the weapons are. Is Iran open or open enough? I wouldn't say open enough in terms of welcoming them, but open enough in terms of terrain and things like that. Iraq, where you can invade Iraq and do all what you wanted to do and keep searching for those weapons of mass destruction. Is that virtually ruled out, or can it be selective in nature?
Okay, there are some people, some American people, as you know, Americans are very Jews, very they are always keen to develop scenarios, etc. So there are some people who have developed one, two, three, four options of invasion of Iran, and basically they are looking at starting from build up in Turkey, some build up in Iraq, some kind of a build up in Iraq. Then they're also looking at using selectively taking over the Strait of Hormuz through force, and ensuring that some supplies are not affected. But these are all very, very nebulous kind of ideas. You country of the size of Iran, as we are looking at the Ukraine-Russia crisis, is very difficult to take over. You cannot take over that country. What the best option for the West is that if they can engineer a regime change. Now, regime change is something which can happen from, in fact, they have already started locating the old Shah of Iran's grand nephew somewhere living in America and bringing him up onto the screen and saying, oh boy, you are the next, going to be the next Khomeini of Iran, etc. But the question basically is this thing is it feasible? What has happened is, and it is repeated in history, is that whenever a country is beaten in a manner or attacked in a manner by an outside power, the nation consolidates behind not so much the leader as the flag. The nation rallies behind the flag. Now the Iranian pride is at stake. And this Iranian pride is at stake, and I'm also seeing from the statements coming out, even from Khomeini and his senior leadership, they are reconciliatory statements. They are not the hardcore cleric statements against the people. They are reaching out to the people. If you saw Prashukin, the president, was with the people, agitating with them. So the whole idea basically is I see a consolidation of public opinion in taking place in terms in the pride of Iran being a civilizational state. You cannot. Civilizational states are states with a history, as you are well aware, who will never compromise on nationhood or their national sovereignty or national pride. Most importantly, national pride. So, what we can see is that there might be a regime change. There might be people who want to who might be these clerics might be thrown out. We might get less. The current president is a moderate president who might take over. But the fact of the matter is that he will not be in a position to compromise with the West under any circumstances. He will not be able to compromise with the Americans under any circumstances. We are already seeing what's happening in Syria. So what repeatedly outside powers do not understand, taking over a nation state and recapturing his nation state and putting in place some kind of corrupt regimes or some kind of a pliable regimes is easier said than done. It is not possible. In fact, what is going to happen is that it's going to create a bigger resolve of the Iranian people to fight it out with these people, and with the support they're going to get from both the Chinese and the Russians, who, for their own sake, will ensure that Iran does not capitulate. The situation is not that easy or as simple for the Western powers to be able to undermine the Iranian either sovereignty or their Iranian pride. There might be regime change, but that regime change will not be pro-West. It will be pro-Iran regime change. Now that's something which we need to understand. And last point over here is what I was trying to tell about Israel is by pecking at Israel, by showing its capability and strengthening, hitting Israel hard, they will also create for themselves a certain degree of standing amongst the Arab people. This might lead to some kind of an Arab awakening who always believe that here are the foreign powers who come into this region, exploit us for our oil, exploit us for our money, exploit us for our resources, and create all kinds of tension, lead to wars, and thereafter leave us begging for their mercy, and we become second-rate citizens to these people. So there, I can see some kind of a revival of Arab nationalism, if I were to use the term, although Iranians are not really part of Arab nationalism, but part of the regional nationalism, where they look after their own side. So this is something which could happen over a period of time. So I do not discount that the rise of internal rise of Islam, internal rise of Iran through its own indigenous processes and bringing about a leadership which will again be a pro-Iranian leadership rather than a pro-Western or a pro-American or a pro-anybody else leadership. This is the kind of scenario I visualize occurring in Iran in the next couple of
Yeah,
months.
I think that's a very, very important point which you made, sir. And I want everyone to understand this point which the Brigadier has made. It is that a regime change is possible, but that regime change will be driven by Iranian factors rather than Western factors. The Iranians might say to hell with this clergy and rally around the President Pezeshkian, who seems to be a slightly moderate kind of a person. Though, of course, he's backed by the clergy himself. That's a different story. But given time, he might be more acceptable to the people of Iran rather than the clergy. The clergy system might get, dismantled. But that's a tough ask. Good. That's one possibility. And I go with what Brigadier Sahgal is saying. That's probably the best option because a Western puppet coming in like that Shah's son is of no use because he spent his life only gallivanting around and being a playboy and poopy, just using all the money which his father took out from here and enjoying himself. And he doesn't have a following, and there's no cogent opposition on the streets. It is the people who have to come up, and Iran has demonstrated this capability of coming up, with someone who can, whom they can create. It happened in '79. It happened later also. It can happen again also, right? So that's one thing which is important. The second thing is if this is overplayed, which Brigadier Sahgal has said, and I go with him completely. If this is overplayed, Israel might start losing favor in the Arab world. Israel and US might start losing favor. Then people will start thinking as to why should we support these people, and when tomorrow it might be our turn. And mind you, they've seen this happen in Syria, they've seen this happen in Iraq. Now Iran, if this Iran also goes through, everything north of the Gulf has gone down, and it's gone down by external interference of USA. So it's only a matter of time before the south of the Gulf countries also come under the midnight hammer. Only thing that midnight hammer, you need not be a great hammer. A small hammer also will break these states because many of them are pretty weak. So politically, if they start this thing, so things are not so easy for USA also. Right. Having said this, sir, you did speak of Russia and you did speak of China, uh, which are good options, or rather, the only options for Iran internationally. After all, they just concluded a strategic deal with Russia, which is not working at this point of time, and they've had a long-term deal of investment from China, as against discounted oil being given to China, and they signed this sometime back, 21. Uh, and you said that China is helping them quietly with Bidu, and even to that extent, there are reports that they would have facilitated cold testing and all that. While this be so, even now, barring statements coming out, barring some anodyne speeches in the UN, Iran and Israel are really not seem to be doing anything. Do you think they'll come forward with something? For example, let me put it this way, sir. Go back to our time in 1971 when we were on the verge of defeating Pakistan in Bangladesh. The Seventh Fleet moved into this area to come to their rescue. At that time, there was set of Russian warships also which moved into this area, and that nullified that move. Plus the fact that by then Dhaka had was fallen and the game was up. I don't see any such movement either by Russia or China. You think they are not interested in Iran, or they're too weak to do anything, or they're stuck in their own problems. After all, Russia is stuck in Ukraine, and it needs USA to disentangle itself from Ukraine. And China has its hands full in the South China Sea, and if it starts coming here, their vulnerabilities will show up there. I'd like your views on this because this has got a
Okay.
larger effect.
Interesting question, sir. See, I think the play has just started. The play has just started in the geopolitical context, not in the bilateral Iran Israel context. That continues. So in the geopolitical context, the issue is that the Americans have moved in here and are reasserting themselves in the Middle East, the so-called Middle East, including the Gulf, as they talk about. The Iran had what is called a look east policy, in which Iran was uh, negotiating trade and other oil sales and other relationships with three major countries, and that what the look east were. One was Russia, one was China, and third was India. So they as their major trading partners. We were concerned about sanctions, so we did not used to take enough oil, but we did that. But we, as you are fully aware, Charbahar, we have invested in Charbahar. And if Bandra Abbas, something happens to Bandra Abbas, Charbahar is going to be the alternative terminal, and it's going to be. And INSTC people are already singing its demise. I'm saying no, it's not going to happen. It's going to remain an important aspect. So what we are looking at right now is the Chinese and the Russians are watching and waiting for this thing. They want to strengthen Iranian and support the Iran to fight with the Americans and keep the Americans engaged. It suits them. It suits them both under the circumstances, because that keeps their mind off, as far as Russia is concerned, from playing around with Ukraine and coming out with the new ideas every day. As you know, Russians are making some interesting gains in Ukraine. And
Ukraine.
similarly, as far as the Chinese are concerned, they are happy if the majority of the forces which are going to come against them are deployed in the Middle East. This creates fatigue. This takes away resources. This puts costs on America, and this allows a much desired time to the Chinese to build up capacities and capabilities. Who China is unveiling on a daily basis. Like today, he said, "Mother of all bombs, besides five megaton warhead, they have trying to show off, etc." So the issue, if you look at it in practical terms, is not more than 1,000 people have died in Iran. There is a lot of destruction of the infrastructure. So Iran remains by and large intact country. It's nothing has seriously happened beyond a certain degree of the destruction. So at this point in time, to play a larger geopolitical game would not be proper for them, but they would all be discussing and trying to make their keeping their options open to deal with it. I suspect at an opportune time, what the Chinese could do, in my view, is sail a career task force into the Indian Ocean region and park it somewhere close to Iran, or bring it to Djibouti and operate in that area for a certain period of time, indicating a show of force and their presence. I mean, that's one thing you can do. But my bigger problem is, where does it leave India? Now, the problem for India is that although we have had some good relationship with Iran, as you are aware, during all kinds of conflicts, this thing, Iranians are by and large have been biased towards the Pakistanis. Not that it bothers us, but the question is that how will Iran react to us? the fact that Prime Minister has spoken to President of Iran
Discussions.
and who has promised him that the oil supplies will not be disrupted is a very good sign. One of the interesting aspects of this thing is that India doesn't have to now worry about the sanctions. India can tell America, this is a contingency. We are not adhering to your sanctions. That India can do if India wants to do it. So the important part over here is I would recommend to. I'm making a politically not a very savvy statement, but let me make it nevertheless. There should be a meeting of RIC, Russia, India, China. This is an old this thing. We can at least discuss the aspect of implications of this thing to our region. It's a region-oriented meeting in which we can discuss. No doubt the Americans are going to shout around. Americans are already shouting around because this will create a dependency on Russia. We get more oil from Russia, etc., etc., etc. Something which is anathema to this administration, like it was to the Biden administration. So the long and short of this is that I think the continental Asian powers would and Eurasian powers will hold their horse, study the scenario, and play their cards slowly and steadily and see how it whole pans out. And as far as India is concerned, India has a dilemma of we are important partners of Israel, who has been very supportive to us under a lot of conditions. Yet we are also dependent on Iran for oil, and under these circumstances, and the Persian Gulf for flow of oil, even that comes from Iraq. So the point at issue is that at this thing is India has to play the political game in a proactive manner, even if requires, India should have an RIC meeting, and that will also not be a bad idea to show Trump that India has options because he has been pushing us hard in the last couple of months on both on trade as well as on security issues. So I think it not be a bad idea for India to sort of indicate that we have options. So RIC meeting, uh, oil port, and as far as China is concerned, possibility of a career task force or some kind of deployment in the region is something I can see coming up in couple of weeks, not tomorrow, day after, because right now I said the situation is too ambiguous, and nobody knows exactly which way it's going.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. Interesting idea that the Chinese task force starts appearing in the Indian Ocean. And I mean, it has major implications. The moment a Chinese task force comes into this area, right, and if we have to do nothing about it, then we are in problems. That's the first thing. And if Americans also do nothing about it, then is a major problem. So I don't know whether China itself has the capability today of sending a task force into Indian Ocean and hang around in Djibouti, because Djibouti, at the end of the day, for a task force base, is too small and it is constricted. So the task force has to live off and if a Chinese task force comes into this area with already 2 to 3 carrier task groups of US out there, the situation will become very volatile. And then it opens up China. And we also have to understand that, look, the Chinese themselves are going through internal problems and which are very severe. I don't know whether they have the leadership, the political leadership, to send a carrier task force out. So we'll leave that out, sir. But the idea of RIC is pretty interesting. Uh, I mean, if not a carrier task force, some task force can come. That I don't rule out.
I'm not saying
Some
I'm not hung up on task force. I'm just saying show of force in the
some show
region.
of force, some show of force. And well, the show of force has to be also meaningful as to whether it can actually come and confront anything. We'll see. But these are times when we have to think like this. The concept of a RIC meeting also is quite okay. Logically, That's probably one way of balancing out China. I mean, no, USA. After what USA did with Pakistan, there's no harm with us going and saying hello to China, right? Only thing is whether we need to do it through a proper RIC meeting or probably through the medium of UN put to all that. We'll have to see our thing and how it goes. And like you said, our first and foremost, we need to play a good political game and secure our oil channels or energy dependence because if we don't have energy coming from the Gulf, we are in problems. So that's one way of looking at it. But we are living in interesting times. Oh, so where does that leave Iran finally? Because what we have discussed so far is Russia and China, even if whatever they do, they can only bail out uh, Iran marginally, maybe a little. They give them sustenance. They could give them sustenance and to make things costly for USA. Where's that Iran leave? Where does that Iran leave, and what can Iran do from then?
So, a critical question that Iran has to answer for itself after all that has happened is that even if there is a new regime that comes in, even there is a support that they get, is what the whole issue is hanging on nuclear capability. Does Iran continue to focus on developing nuclear capability in terms of enriched uranium to higher degrees, enriching uranium to higher levels, or it pauses its program, goes back into some kind of a discussion mechanism with a much broader mechanism, not JOCPA kind of this thing. And they will also like to bring the Chinese into this or India also part of into it. Let's look at it from a bigger.
Yeah,
Let's reinvent the whole
nuclear deal.
the nuclear deal, and put it aside for a couple of years and consolidate on nation building, and in that bargain also ensure that their what's it called uh, the reconstruction processes, the sanctions and all are also removed from Iran, and they have let's put it this way, refurbish and redevelop their country, redevelop relationships with them. The idea of continuously hammering Israel or continuously attacking Israel is again an important aspect as part of the strategy, is to show that Israel is not the only credible player in the region. There are people who can stand up to Israel, and therefore that will also, like, I mean, it was alluded in our discussion that the other Arab nations will realize that it is important to play a more consolidated, holistic role for the regional development rather than this thing. So, in the new form of Iran, if it becomes a catalyst in becoming a regionally developer and starts looking at the region from a whole more holistic developmental perspective, with sanctions removed, I think it will be a good step for Iran to pull back from the crisis at this particular point in time, play for time, and use this next 5 to 10 years, minimum 10 years, to develop capacity capabilities, and then see what it wants to do with itself. So that's the kind of thinking
Yeah,
I would, if I was to Iranian, I will do it because look what has happened to Pakistan. I mean, they have 170 odd nuclear weapons, etc. Still, is a beggar nation, no? I mean, they
yeah,
have
yeah.
to beg everything.
What's the use of these nukes?
What is the use of you? What is, and also in Op Sindoor, I was discussing this whole issue for 1.5 hours today on the strategic stability. The whole idea is that we have created enough space, no? So where does did it stop Pakistan from being hammered by us in the on the 9th and 10th. The situation for Pakistan on that day was that they couldn't fly a damn plane in the sky on the 10th of May. So the question is, you have to be pragmatic. You cannot be ideologically driven all the time and have all this kind of a antithesis against a country and say, I hate this kind, I hate this thing. Be pragmatic, choose your battles, choose the timing of the battles, and develop capacities and capabilities if ever you want to fight those battles. But you cannot be blindsided in fighting, like we would say in northern India, you know, not think, act first and think later. That kind of a scenario.
Yeah, I think that's a very well made out argument, sir, or case. Iran has to step back and see what it can get from nuclear, being a nuclear power. That's what its ambition is. Uh, I mean, I think Iran's nuclear ambitions vis-a-vis developmental goals, they are at cross purposes with each other, and I think Iranians themselves sooner than later need to realize this. The second thing is that they have to probably now at the point of time say, okay, we'll go into a deal, not with the US, not with the UN. We want a regional setup, call people, and everyone, all powers sit together and have take a call and come to some deal with them is the way forward. I don't see any other way because, like we rightly today virtually we war game the situation. Whether the Chinese can come in with a task force also, it's going to be difficult for them. Whether the Russians can come in, leaving Ukraine out, notwithstanding whatever they've gained out of Ukraine, they don't have the lengths to come down that far. They might give some drones, they might give some missiles and all that, but
Only support.
support. So I think it's time. The best option for Iran seems to be to take a step back, look at it. Is nuclear ambitions that important, or peace and development of Iran and retaining your own sovereignty, which is more important? I think that's the large message which has come out after today's discussion. That's the best message I think for Iran and the best option for Iran. Yeah, they can continue throwing a few missiles here and there with militias and all that, but they have to live to fight another day, right? Lest they can't, lest they are consumed by their own fire within, because that will happen sooner or later, right? So I think we've covered a lot of territory and we've covered a lot of new ground. We've thrown a lot of incendiary options to people. They might not be, the regular things which you've heard. We come out with out of box solutions because today we were speaking more from the Iranian side, and you have to understand what Iran's options are. So that is why we've come out with these ideas. So, with your permission, we'll take a few questions if you don't
Yes,
mind,
sure.
and then yeah, we have about 10 minutes, and we'll yeah. Let me go to the top. Yeah, first and foremost, yeah, all viewers, please click the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and become a member and share this video with all your friends and all that. Okay. Now, this gentleman, General, there are reports that 16 trucks have removed the stock of already enriched uranium just before bombing. Has USA alerted Iran through Pakistan and played a double game? So, your view on this is
No, the bottom line is that, like we have said, I mean, there is no. Iran has ensured that the enriched uranium does not get destroyed in this strike. That should be a given. I mean, majority of which they must have moved out. That's also a given. But the issue is, what are they going to do with this enriched
yeah,
uranium? We are looking beyond that. These are tactical issues. These are tactical issues related to his nuclear ambitions. So, what we have been discussing today is that Iran has to reconcile two different routes. Whether it continues with its nuclear ambitions and gets beaten up, people get attacked by Israelis, get swamped and attacked by the Americans, and degrade its own infrastructure, capacities, capabilities, and become a economically become a basket case, or take a step back, It's not a victory for the West. No, they have enriched the uranium. They wanted to enrich the uranium to capacity that they wanted. It's not a defeat for them. You just take a step back. They know the cycle, like somebody rightly said in Iran the other day. You can destroy a building, but you can't destroy brains because we know how to do it. We can do it again. And putting up centrifuges is not a very difficult task. It's just tubes only which have to be assembled. So the bottom line is that in my view, Iran needs to take a call as to how far they want to go with their nuclear ambitions. That's a larger issue over here, and this is not being dictated to them by what the Americans have done or somebody else have done, but the fundamental point is yes, a situation has appeared where the choices are rather limited, and if under those limited choices, there has to be an Iranian solution to the whole issue, which makes Iran feel strong, capable, and economically developed. Under the circumstances, if they continue the path of nuclear development, they perhaps may not be, and that's a choice they'll have to make. In my view.
Yeah, I agree with you, sir. And I'd like to add, Wordcraft. Today morning I did this show. I explained to you what has happened in all the Iranian nuclear program is a pretty extensive one. It is just not the enriched uranium. What do you do with the enriched uranium? Nothing. The enriched uranium you can keep, it will not burst on its own. You have to convert it into a weapon, right? That from here to converting it to a weapon takes some effort. They might have one weapon. Even if they have that weapon, will they lob it across? Because if they lob one, they'll get 10 back. They're completely outnumbered. One or two has got no value, right? Even one carrier task force might have more nuclear weapons than what Iran has at this point of time, right? And while Iran might have 100 targets with one weapon, 100 weapons have one target, that is Iran. So it's a outmatch completely at this point of time. And their nuclear infrastructure is also almost on its knees. They have to rebuild. That's what the brigadier said. They have to rebuild, and for rebuilding, they have to rebuild. Start from economy. Centrifuges can be re-put back, but it needs money. You have brains. Use those brains. Like the important point which he said is, Iranian people are there. The people are the strength of a nation, and the people of Iran have this capability to, bounce back, and that's what they need to do. Okay. The next thing is a statement, not Iran, sir, but Mullah Khamenei's days are over. Possible. Uh, your view on that, sir?
Individuals don't matter, sir. Mullah Khamenei
Yeah.
was a leader in his own time. He's been there for 30 odd years. He spent his life this thing. At the end of the day,
Each
maybe
time you go.
the Iran situation that it finds itself in is because of this his own desire to impose his cleric will on the people
Yeah.
and at the cost of development. And I think people will be happy to see him go and take over a much more moderate leadership. After all, country needs development at the end of the day. People need to have their life. And Iranians are very, very smart people and outgoing people. Uh, it's a great country in their own way.
Okay. Amid opposition, outrage, and growing public criticism within India over its silence over the US Israel action against Iran, is Indian foreign policy facing a serious moral failure and lack of substance? So,
I think our Prime Minister has spoken to the President of Iran and reassured
Iran,
him that India wants to see this whole thing de-escalated, and India is right in that. I mean, people must understand diplomacy is not that he's right, you are wrong, etc. There is a strategic space you have to operate in, and that strategic space is defined not by the current events. The strategic space is defined by a much larger number of interests, and in those, I mean, opposition can say what they feel like because they don't have to run the government. And the government has to be run, they have to see a large number of elements in play. So based on those elements in play, like we are expecting Iran to do something sensible and not pursue a nuclear program. I mean, that's the theme that we come up with today. The similar idea is for a country like India. We also don't have to be foolhardy. We also have to see the consequences. So therefore, we have to play our cards according to how our interests are best served, not the Iranian interests. We are not here to serve Iranian interests. So if our political position, which is a position of virtuousness, is that we said this de-escalate the crisis. This will not get you anywhere. That's what India has done. And after that, what India does, how it plays the cards, is to ensure that our interests are not compromised. Please also understand one thing. If there is a blockade of oil, which country is going to provide us extra oil? That is coming from the United States. Please understand, we are buying a large amount of oil from the United States. So we have to be pragmatic on these issues and just not get carried away by social media kind of handles and to say that you should do that, you should do that. No, no, it's not. That's unfortunately a very juvenile sort
Yeah.
of way of looking at things.
Yeah, agreed. Iranian terrain is too difficult to invade. Yeah, I completely am grateful to many of you who started understanding that invading countries is over ground. It is not in just air, right? So ultimately, boots on ground matters. Boots on ground, Americans and you Israelis don't have. The next thing is Shankar sir, your morning episode on nuclear technology was amazing. Kudos. Yeah, I put that out for a reason. Unless you understand the entire nuclear chain, you don't appreciate what is happening. Otherwise, you think the nuclear story is only about enrichment. It's not so. It's much more than that. Right. Uh, Iran can rebuild over time and come back with vengeance. Also, they could have developed parallel facilities hidden from the Americans. Well, that can happen. That's a possibility. Uh, they can have parallel facilities and all that. But Iran, like what Brigadier Sahgal has said, has to think where it is going from here. Can it defeat America? Can it defeat USA? Can it defeat Israel? It's not possible with where it is. It has to have an exit policy of its own. Anything you want to add on this, sir?
I am simply saying it, cleric ego should not undermine the nation.
Yeah,
As simple as that. What Iranians have suffered because of the cleric ego who have put religion on top of development. Now that's something which we need not accept. And my suggestion to any moderate leader in Iran would be please consider development, growth, and your own interests rather than trying to be a big player and exporting revolutions in the entire Arabian Peninsula.
regions.
So,
Yeah,
so basically, no, do not. I mean, you want to make Israelis extinct from this world. It doesn't happen. It cannot happen. Like nobody can make the Iranians extinct from this world. So basically, be pragmatic and forward looking rather than inward looking.
completely agree with you, sir. What kind of political trade military opportunities will India get if Iran regime change fails? Will the Iranian government look to more stable partners such as India?
We have a reasonably good relationship with Iran, and I mean, given the circumstances under which we operate, yes. I mean, why would it not? Uh, why would Iran not have good relationship with us? Basically speaking, is that there we had some problems with Iran because the Iranian leadership promised us some oil rights, then they took it away, etc. Paris oil fields, etc. Those are all part and parcel, but yet we have Chabahar and other issues. The whole idea basically is that these countries in this region have to stay together to understand that we are all dependent upon each other rather than start looking far away nations who control the global economy but who don't have that much of a regional impact. So what is happening is the global players, the West, is using its leverages to create dissensions between the countries in the region. That's something which we need to relook ourselves and try and be more cooperative towards each other. Yes, on the sanctions issue, Americans will play the sanctions card, but at some time or the other, we have to call the American bluff. Sanctions or no sanctions, let's see what they do. Can
Yeah,
1.4 crore people, can the Americans say we'll put sanctions on you? Can Americans put sanctions on China? They can't even put tariffs on them. And they put tariffs on them and they withdraw the tariffs the next day. So basically, play to your strength. You have to play to your strength. You can't play to your weaknesses.
yeah. Attack. Namaste from Norway. Have been to India 8 times, Bangalore and Chennai. Great. Next time you come to Chennai, just let me know. We'll meet. But having said that, I'm grateful that from all the way from Norway you're listening to us. And we're making a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm also
Then
very happy because my daughter is going to Norway. So I'm happy the Norwegians are listening to me.
China is salivating at the opportunity to trap weakened Iran under its predatory loans and arms sales under BRI. Well, let's see where it goes. It's already trapped Iran in a big way, and that's where it brought Iran to. A lot of nations will now think of completely going towards China. Um, that's my view. So, your views on this?
I don't think Chinese BRA is okay. I mean, China. You earlier said in the discussion that how China has exploited Iran by getting cheap oil from them. So that's something that's going to happen. But Iranians are not stupid. Iranians are also, broad-minded, Western-oriented people. They are not. So they will have their limits in terms of how much they want to deal with China. They will use China, sure. Chinese investment will come in, sure. But in the reconstruction business, uh, there can be no doubt that Iranians will seek the Chinese help because they are the best in the marketplace and the cheapest. So there would be a certain this thing, but I don't think Iran will become a Chinese colony. That's something which is a civilizational state, and
It will not
civilizational
happen.
states do not allow other people to control their destiny.
Yeah. Hans, this is a view. RIC shall be considered only after China gives back all stolen India's land. Yeah, that's a sentiment. We take it. Okay. Yeah, if Russia provides weapon systems to Iran, then the Russia-Ukraine situation would escalate as well. So,
I think if you follow the Russia-Ukraine issue, it is coming slowly to an end. Uh, Zafarzoya has fallen yesterday. See, what people are not understanding is that Russians are not keen to take over the entire country. They wanted to reach up to Dnieper, if I think that's the name of the river. So they have not done. They have got about 75% of their goals so far. There are about 120,000 people, Russians, who have died. So the costs are increasing for the Russians. They are also very conscious of that. So I think they are also now, Putin is also seeking some kind of a settlement, but he will not allow a settlement to come which will undermine the Russian security. So there are a number of issues involved, but by and large, I don't think Russia has the capacity and the capability to supply reasonable amount of weapon systems for the reason that they wanted. I mean, there nobody is invading anybody in this. What they basically want are the missiles, rockets, launchers, as well as the drones. That kind of thing, and also the technical outputs. If not Baidu, at least they were like a Galileo or something else to support them. Basically, support systems is what the Russians will provide to the Iranians to withstand the onslaught from the West, which is coming against them. But it is not. They are not seeking anything more than to fight anybody.
yeah. So the last comment: India should learn from Bharat how to build a modern polity. I think there's a lot of sense, and that's what you've been also saying, that they have to step back and see how to build their own systems before they start fighting against everyone. It's nice to project power, but it's more important to retain power at home. and that's how it is. So I've done today with all the questions and all that. We've covered a fair ground. Anything you want to say in the end, and otherwise I'll close the show, sir.
No, no. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for. We had a great discussion, and I hope the
And
Iranians are listening.
I hope so, sir. And I thought all of you who have come up, you come up with a lot of interesting questions. I'm sorry I'm not able to take it because we are running out of time. Tomorrow morning I'll be back at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'll discuss China's geopolitical decline tomorrow, if nothing else happens. There's no great action overnight. We'll discuss China's geopolitical, decline because it's happening in front of our eyes, and I'll come to you with examples and see where it is going. And you see how China is getting stuck with Iran. Though we have discussed what China can do, the bigger question is, will China be able to do it? And that's what something we'll discuss tomorrow. Thank you, sir. Thank you for this, thought-provoking discussion on what Iran's options are. And thanks for all the questions from the audience. Good evening and Jai Hind to all of you, and Jai Hind to you too, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. God bless.